Okay, guys. So my name is Christy Thompson, and I am the marketing director here at BIS. And we just wanted to say thank you so much for coming out today and hopping on the call. If you have any questions during the presentation, there's a chat box. Feel free to answer in your questions. We'll make sure to take them and may interrupt the presentation a little bit to give the question over to Ted and Philip. Also, we're going to keep you muted until the very end, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So thanks for coming out today for our 5 key ingredients to a perfect brand that will attract loyal customers. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Phillip Long. If you've been on our webinars before, then you're very familiar with him. He is the CEO of BIS Technology Group. He is a technologist and entrepreneur who specializes in providing technology solutions and security consulting to businesses along the Gulf Coast. He's been in the IT industry for over 15 years. He has over 600 plus clients from Gulfport to Gulf Breeze, and he's the current owner of 5 businesses, and he also attained his Certified Information Systems Security Professional certificate. So I'm going to pass this over to Philip.
Well, thank you very much, Christy, and thank you guys for sharing an hour of your afternoon with us. We really do appreciate it, and I'm really excited about today and such a topic that is so important. And we have a very special guest, Mr. Ted HULSY. He's really what I would call a friend more than anything, but he's really been very instrumental along my way of doing marketing, understanding the clients, and really a lot of the topics that we're going to talk about today. I know that kind of the year end comes and people begin to focus on what next year looks like. So we thought it'd be a good time to put something like this on. So currently, Ted is the global head of channel marketing at Dropbox. He has over 20 years of high-tech marketing experience. He has also worked a lot in distribution channels and B2B. He's worked for SonicWall as well as Accent. And like I say, we've run across each other, I don't know, time flies when you're having fun, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to Ted HULSY. Ted, you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Philip. I appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be here. And it's, as you mentioned, Philip, we've met, almost 10 years ago doing marketing together with SonicWall and Axion and other vendor relationships. And I'm thrilled to be here and share some of the insights that I've gained in being a B2B marketer.
Great. And of course, the topic today is talking about one that I think is so important, especially in today's environment with all of the, basically the logos. And I don't know where I read it, but, they talk about that we see thousands upon thousands of logos, images, basically brands per day. So there's a competing market space for, every brand, and it's very important to somehow figure out how to differentiate yourself. So, what's kind of just your broad stroke view of why it's so important and to develop that strong brand?
I think the answer is brand matters, developing a brand, and we're going to talk about what we mean by a brand today. And I think the reality is, whether you're a small business or a large business, brand matters. Now, admittedly, as you're growing as a company, investments, a larger company will have, an enterprise will have a whole brand marketing department. Most small businesses, you can't afford that. But I think the important thing is brand at its highest level kind of encompasses who you are, what your mission is, how you want to serve your customers or your clientele at the highest level. And I think no matter what your business size, you as a business owner or a decision maker or leader in your organization need to think about brand very intentionally and make sure that you're maximizing your investments into that effort at every stage of your growth as a company.
Sure. And kind of, to kind of jump right in here, the first topic that, we felt like was most important was really, your audience. What do we mean by our audience? Drill down into that for me.
Well, I think a lot of businesses, as you grow, you can be very tactical about who you're going to serve. And I think what's really important is when we talk about audience, you are defining who precisely you're trying to talk to with your products and your services and your mission as a company. And so audience, there's a lot of different ways to think about audience. You could think about audience as a vertical market. So for instance, you may be focused on dentists, or you may be focused on real estate agents. So there's a lot of different ways to think about audience, but it could be vertical. It could be by the size of companies or clients you serve. It could be the kinds of households or personal professionals you are looking to target. So no matter what your business is, I think it's really important to take a step back and identify who your ideal customer or client is, and then write that down and really try to think about the ideal customer or client on all the different dimensions that really matter. Are you going to serve them in a single county or city or metro area, or are you going to serve a whole, 4-state area? And that's going to always depend on how much resource you have at your disposal and how focused you want to be. I think you want to be intentional about the size of the company you're going to serve. Their vertical markets, as we mentioned. You want to kind of understand the solution area, or based upon what kind of product or service you have, it's going to drive who in that organization you're actually going to be talking to. So a big part of thinking about audience is not just the company who's the customer, but actually the personas and the individuals inside those organizations who are the decision makers or influencers on buying your product or services. And then also thinking about it in terms of psychographics, and hobbies, and are they baby boomers or are they millennials? What do they have a passion for? Because at the end of the day, we ultimately build relationships with our customers and our clients, and you do want to go, several layers deeper in that relationship and really understand what drives them at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really, really, really good. Well, we call it, we try to build out the avatar, and I think some practical ways that you can accomplish getting that, and that is, I believe, probably one of the most important things to start is really, something that Ronald Reagan, said, how he really connected with the American people, and one thing that he said was that, whenever he gave a speech, he didn't talk to all of America, he talked to Americans. And I think you can get in a room and, pick out some of your best clients and, identify their needs, their wants, their fears, all those kind of things, and really hammer that out is, geography is usually pretty easy. Possibly company size can be easier, but some of what the psychographic kind of things, some of the areas where they have problems is really something that will often pay a lot in getting that, that hour-long session that you do with your leadership team could really pay off. So, okay, I guess we'll jump on. Let's move on to corporate identity. Kind of, what's your thoughts on, what do you mean when you say corporate identity?
Well, I think it's, again, going back to your mission as an organization. So I think a key thing, just to really touch back on audience real quick, is at every stage of what we're talking about today, I think it's really important to write things down. It's very important to have the right people in the room helping craft what you write down. It's very important to go through several revisions and iterations of whatever you are documenting, and know that it will evolve. And don't be too hidebound to, the discipline of writing it down will mean that at any given point you're working on what's important now. Situations may change and you could evolve things. But I think a lot of companies don't spend enough time on identifying who they are and writing down their mission, vision, and values. And if we kind of peel back the onion a little bit, what do we mean by that? Your vision is like, where do you see the future? Like, what do you see in the future and your role in it? And writing down how you want to impact the future. Your mission is what kind of dent are you going to put in the universe? I mean, what kind of change are you going to make in the lives of your clients and your customers? And then your values are what's important to you. I think a good way to think about values is even if the company didn't succeed tomorrow and sales didn't materialize and you went bankrupt, what are those 5 or 6 things that you believe in that no matter what happens, you're never going to compromise those things? And I think that's a very powerful exercise. You want alignment, of course, inside of a company between the leadership and the workforce and everybody involved about those values. And those are things that you would never violate. You would never, for the almighty dollar, you would never change your behavior around those things. And I think what you'll find is that that's very motivating for your workforce. And then I think what people underestimate is your customers and your clients will care about your mission and vision and values. And so you shouldn't hide them under a basket. You should make sure that they are part of your marketing mix and that they actually shine through in what you're actually talking about with your brand.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I actually had a conversation with someone really close to me that is building a business, and one of the things that he kept saying was how he felt about this or felt about that. And I think that nothing wrong with feelings, of course, but oftentimes if we're making decisions on a daily basis and we're making operational or directional type decisions, we want to have the who we are, what we do, and why we do it nailed down, so that if we have a bad day, if I ate a burrito for breakfast and it didn't set well, I don't want to start making decisions off that. And I think you can do that if you haven't kind of nailed this portion of your branding down, if you follow me.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think there's a lot of great books out there that walk you through how and why this is so important. I mean, an author that I like a lot is Patrick Lencioni. Mm-hmm. He's written several books around helping organizations define their mission, vision, and values. And for him, it's all around clarity. I think a lot of if you look, I mean, all the business owners and leaders who are on this call, if you think about when somebody on your team maybe doesn't do an excellent job, and you look and you're like, why did they believe that was the right thing to do, or why did they think that was good service for that client when it clearly wasn't? I think if you really peel back the onion on that and look at it, it's usually like a misalignment or confusion around what your mission, vision, and values are as an organization. And sometimes you can't really expect your workforce to really go out there and behave how you want them to behave unless you've done a really excellent job of defining your mission, vision, and values and your culture, what you stand for, and have that flow through operationally in how you run your business.
Yeah. Good stuff. That really is good stuff. That's something really where you want to start probably in, to determine, who you are, what you want to accomplish, and how you want to do it is kind of how I think of those things. Where are you going, and what are you going to do, and why are you doing it is something that, and I would recommend. It's difficult, especially depending upon the age of the organization and all those things. Sometimes you got to start with a smaller group, form a leadership team, and get those guys on board and kind of define that. And then you got to be an evangelist and just talk about it, and in every meeting have push those topics and all that kind of stuff. So that's really good stuff. All right, let's talk about the brand promise. What are you talking about when you say brand promise? I put a couple slides here talking about just some of the companies and their brand promises, but give me a little insight on that, Ted.
Yeah, these are all great examples, and it's really brand promises about what you're going to do for whom and how it's going to make a real difference in their life. And what you'll find is if you've done a good job thinking about your vision for the future and how you're going to play a role in that, and the mission of your organization, your mission is going to very much flow into your brand promise. But the brand promise is more thinking about your mission and then putting yourself in your clients' or your customers' shoes and thinking about the set of words that are going to make it crystal clear for your target audience. You see how this all hangs together. You got to know who you're serving. You got to have that, you mentioned Ronald Reagan, and one of the things that people said about Reagan is he felt, like you said, people felt like he is speaking to me. And that's how you want your customers and your clients to feel, whether in all of your marketing, whether it's a seminar, or workshop, or you want to feel like they're speaking to you, and because you really understand their problems, and so you're speaking to them in a powerful sort of way. But when you're formulating your brand promise, you're speaking to the right people, and then you're translating your mission into tangible benefits for your target audience and what it's going to mean for them and how you're going to make a big difference in their lives. And that's why they're buying whatever they're buying from you. If you're a lawyer, you're a dentist, you're a real estate agent, you're a manufacturer making a product, you want to, your brand promise is the written message of how you're going to really deliver value ultimately to your target audience.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. And I think that, in what you had said there, to just kind of echo that with the fact of you really want to think about, put yourself in that client's shoes. One of the things I love about what I get to do for a living is I get to go out and meet with clients, and I get to kind of put myself in their shoes, and I really enjoy just really that exercise and that conversation, and I can see what their struggles are. And I think one way to help develop a brand promise is you can do an ask campaign. If you have a particular vertical that you're serving, a phone call with 2 or 3 of your top clients, the ones that we would call your audience or your avatar, the one you're really looking for, an A+ client or however you rank them, have a conversation with them about, what are your struggles? What are the things that, I could help you with? I think is such a very easy conversation. Oftentimes it strengthens relationships. You spoke of Patrick Lencioni. He's probably in this area of team building and understanding things. He's probably one of my very favorite. I've read everything he's ever written, and he has such an insight for how just really humans interact, and it all gets down to trust. And I think that your brand promise must push a level of trust, or in order to even get there, I guess you got to determine, it's got to solve a problem for someone, I guess I should say. And then of course you've got to be trustworthy enough that they feel that you can actually execute on what you've promised. Really good stuff.
And I would just say, I love the insight of involving your clients and your A+ clients in this process, because what they're going to say to you is they're going to use the set of words that really will resonate with others. And I just would encourage you, and so I just want to just totally endorse that approach you recommended there, that a big part of correctly crafting these messages and building your brand is having listening posts, habits in how you behave to get this feedback from your customers and your clients, and to really capture those words, either record sessions or have somebody who's taken really detailed notes so you get those exact words. But then I think, sometimes probably everybody on the line here is looking at these brand names up here. These are some of the biggest, best brands in the world. And you're thinking, well, how the heck am I going to do this for my own business? And I guess my advice would be is don't overthink it.
Yeah.
If you've thought intentionally about audience and you've documented your mission, vision, and values, moving to your brand promise shouldn't be like rocket science. There's a lot of frameworks out there to do it. And if you're kind of trying to use the same words your clients are already using to define it, then it's going to be a lot easier to get there.
And that's a great segue really into brand identity. And this oftentimes is where, literally in our marketing company in the designs division. I had a meeting earlier this week with a client, and their biggest problem is that to send out the simplest thing, it was taking them 2 and 3 hours to develop something. So I want to kind of highlight the down here on the bottom of the slide. Perfection is the enemy of good, and consistency is ultimately the most important thing. But talk to us about brand identity, Ted.
I think brand identity is an area that trips up a lot of folks. When I work, I've been working with small businesses in the technology space for a long time. And I think when you say branding or brand to a lot of small businesses, they think, oh, I can't afford that, or that sort of thing. And they don't invest enough in identity. And what you end up with is a very inconsistent execution. You see, between their website and their business cards and the wrap on the car, whatever, it's like, oh, well, we change the logo every year. And so it's now executed in 3 or 4 different ways across all these very important touch points. And that because if you've done all the right audience work and the corporate identity work, and you've got this great brand promise, you want your identity to immediately trigger all those things. And if you've been inconsistent, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Uh-huh.
Now, that being said, it's you just need to be intentional about it. It doesn't require massive budgets. I think back to a company I worked for, and I literally, we had all these really expensive offers in front of us to work on corporate identity, and I ended up hiring a guy, a one-man band from Northern Ireland. He was the guy who wrote all the best books and blogs about logos. And he was like a one-man band working for Northern Ireland, and he redesigned the logo of the company I was working with. So there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and the main thing is hire in some expertise, hire somebody who can help you with your identity, who has done it before for other organizations, and be consistent.
Yeah.
Make a resolution. You're not going to do this and change it every year. You're going to change it every 3. You're going to evolve it every 3 to 4 years, but you're going to stick to something.
Yeah.
And then you're going to, I think I love this slide you guys have, the artwork we have here in front of us, because you see that those color tones, the logo, it's the same everywhere on every little touch point, down to the sticker that goes on the bag. And I think even as a small business owner, you need to think about that level of thoroughness of execution with your brand identity.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And, one thing from a very practical standpoint, this is something that you may want to look at all the time or on given intervals. We got a new year coming that often triggers people's, kind of thoughts and minds. Maybe you do it annually, but one of the things that we did was we went and we worked out all of our fonts. We worked out all of our colors, down to the, in Adobe, how you can actually drill down and get the exact, I think it's Pantone or whatever, the color, get the right color, right fonts, right ratios, go down the list, and you can do an exercise. And then whenever you go to put out an email, or whenever you go to build your website or anything that you're doing, or business card or whatever, you're using the same colors, the same logo, the same fonts, so that you get that. It's really not that hard. But again, I want to reiterate, because I see people, like you had said earlier, they stumble hard right here, and they won't do anything. And of course, analysis or paralysis by analysis is one of the biggest things that can really hold you back.
Yeah, and one of the things that comes out of when you hire somebody, basically a good litmus test, if you're going to hire somebody on your brand identity to help you, is there should be a brand style guide, should be one of the deliverables.
There you go.
And you can think about the style guide as your roadmap to help you with all those decisions that are going to come down the pike. Can the t-shirt be that color for the trade show or not? Does the stationery, go with the logo scheme? And if you have that style guide, that brand style guide, it'll be your roadmap you can use to help you and the entire team, stay the course and keep that consistency, which can sometimes trip people up.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate what I said earlier about the brand promise. You can also use your clients, use your staff, use the entire team, use your wife whenever you make something. Let people look at it and let them vote on it. Of course, Ted, I'm on the partner council for Accent, and that is actually we're having a call on that. I can't remember which day, but very near within a week, and they're involving me in some of the design, some of the colors, some of the things, basically to see what I like. And that poll testing like that can really go a long ways, because especially if you're in for me, I'll speak of is, I'm a techie kind of guy. I know what I like, but sometimes we get kind of boxed into our own fish tank, if you will, and we can't really see what the world says. And you mentioned it earlier, even about recording and writing good notes about the words that your clients use. They're so much more powerful than the word that you may, the industry standard word, or in the bubble, if you will. I think that's really important.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll jump on and we'll look at lead generation. This is a very important part of. I think that oftentimes I see this missed. I see they do a lot of this work, and then they never execute all the effort and all that energy into what it really should be about is attracting that particular avatar, that particular audience to your company. So speak to that a little bit for me, Ted.
Yeah, I think the challenge, I think, for a lot of business folks is we kind of think about I'm either going to do brand marketing or I'm going to do lead generation. And I think hopefully from today's conversation, what became clear is you can't ignore brand. If you are starting a company tomorrow and you are one person, you better go through these steps we just defined. And again, it's maybe something you could document on a couple pieces of paper. Your brand style guide may only be, 4 pages of a PowerPoint, if you're just starting out as a single person. But the point is you have to think about brand, and you can't I really don't recommend going and doing lead generation unless you've thought through these other aspects of your brand identity and your brand identity and all the different components we've talked about today. However, you need to, in almost every industry you can imagine, you need to be thinking about leads, especially in B2B. Leads is the currency of the realm. And what we mean by a lead is that's somebody who is not yet buying what you sell, and they've raised their hand. They've engaged with you in some way to show their level of interest, their engagement with your brand, their attraction to the message or the educational content you're putting out there. And you really just need to be laser focused, especially in B2B, with generating qualified leads and then moving those leads down your sales funnel into an opportunity and then into closed revenue. And the whole point about lead generation is it's got to be measurable. Thank you for the slide transition there. If you're laser focused on lead generation after you've defined your brand identity, then you're going to be more metric driven. And if you can measure something, you can manage something. And you may discover your lead metrics or maybe too ambitious or not ambitious enough or kind of off the mark in certain areas. So you can change your numbers as you go. But if you've got numbers, then you can work towards and manage those numbers. Yeah. And that's kind of what we mean by lead generation. And it's really, especially in the B2B realm, it's super vital and central to what you need to be doing as a business owner.
Yeah, and I don't remember where I got this from, but I know I stole it from somebody. But one of the things about doing lead generation or marketing in general is, you want to fire bullets, not cannons. And the principle of that, I forget, there was a particular battle where there was ships, and one of the ships went and loaded up all of the powder in the cannon, fired at the other ship, and the cannonball missed, And whereas the other ship was basically firing very small cannons, basically honing in on the target. But again, you have to measure. You want to fire, bullets, do some test things to see, what's working, what's not working, so that you don't go out there and blow your budget on everything. And I'll add one more thing to that I have seen personally is they'll do something and it was actually successful. You ask somebody, say, hey, the last thing that you did from a lead gen or a marketing piece, what's the last thing you did? And they'll tell you it was a direct mail, whatever it was, a webinar, a seminar. And they're like, yeah, man, it just worked so well. Gosh, we really connected with the people, and it was very profitable, highly profitable. I'm like, well, do you do that like once a month, once a quarter? What do you do? What did you do? Oh, yeah, they did it one time. And, I stole this from Robin Robbins, and, you really want to, who's a marketing professional for specifically the IT space, we have to think about our leads, as an oil well. There's a particular cost for, of course, putting in the well, and then there's a particular cost for pumping the oil out of the ground. And of course, we have to measure in order to know that the oil that's being sold at market is profitable. So you do want to measure that, but once you have that well drilled and you have the process made to produce that material and to get it out to the market, you just want to keep pumping that over and over and over again.
And to kind of circle back on kind of where we started the conversation and to pick up on this metaphor of the oil well, you want to make sure you're drilling in the right field. Yeah. So to go really right back to our very first topic, which is audience, once you start doing demand generation and lead generation, and you've done all this really hard work to make sure your identity is consistent and quality and you look sharp, and then you have a promise, you want to make sure you're actually talking to the right people with your marketing. Yeah. If you're doing a seminar or a lunch and learn or workshop, the people in those seats better be the right people. The people on the webinar better be the right people. The people receiving the direct mail or the email or the advertisements on Facebook or whatever, they better be the right people, because you want to, if you're going to go dig that oil well and drill that oil and make that investment, it better be in the right field where there's actually a lot of potential and oil in the ground to extract.
That's very, very, very good stuff. Now, of course, I'd mentioned this earlier, using ask campaigns, which I think is one of the things that, the easiest way to get somebody to do something for you is to say, hey, would you help me out here? That's how Ted got on this call, and it really works. And I think in general, humanity, to a large degree, we want to help one another. And there's a lot of things we can do with ask campaigns, and I know you've done that a lot, Ted. Talk to me about some things you've done for ask campaigns.
Well, if I go back to my time with Axient, I think just it comes back to one of the greatest things you can do to build credibility with your audience is to incorporate your own clients in the messaging. So, Philip, that's how we got to know each other. Is that I did some co-marketing with you down, I think in Pensacola, and we did some lunch and learns together. And then I invited you to a webinar to talk about your experience, and you shared your experience as an IT service provider with other IT service providers on the line. So I asked you to help me out, share your experience, talk about your experience with the Axient products, and that's just great marketing. So one thing I would encourage everyone to do is really incorporate your customers and your clients into your marketing mix. Get them on stage, get them onto the webinar, get them in a client case study or a written testimonial, get a written testimonial from your clients, and actually, ask them to put their name and their face, not an anonymous one, but their name and their face on your website to say, hey, I believe in this company. That stuff is hugely powerful. It's what builds trust. It's what is the pillar behind a lot of brands is is the credibility that there's other really smart people who also buy into that brand. And that's just a terrific way to, to build up trust and to build great marketing, because the content is killer. I mean, if you're a real estate agent and you're looking to buy a piece of software to help real estate agents, and there's a real estate agent up in the front of the room talking about his or her experience using that software, you are going to listen to that person big time, and that just simply works. So I can't encourage that enough. And I think, to your point, Philip, people love to help. Most people, just if you ask them in a proper, polite sort of way, in a professional sort of way, for their help to help you beef up your marketing mix and talk about their experience, so many people will gladly say yes.
Yeah, great. Let's talk about a little bit, about clients, gaining clients through thought leadership. What does that mean?
Well, I just have, thought leadership maybe can sometimes sound maybe too highfalutin, but I just would encourage you, especially if you're in the B2B space, to think about education as the grist for the mill. In your marketing, if you think about whatever you do, whatever your mission is as an organization, you have a ton of knowledge and insight and wisdom to share with your clients. And I can guarantee you that if you take that wisdom and you put it into a whole bunch of different mediums, think blogs, think social media posts, think webinars, or books. You could write a book on something you know a lot about, seminars, free seminars, workshops, lunch and learns, you name it. And you go out there and share your wisdom with the people who are considering doing business with your firm, and you give them that wisdom and those insights and that thought leadership. That is very, very, very powerful marketing. And that is what is going to drive leads. If you generate interesting content, interesting thought leadership, you give them free advice that helps them get to the big pain points and problems they're trying to solve. And what do most business people, if you're in B2B, what do most business people care about? They care about growing revenue and reducing risk. So pick any industry, whether you're talking to dentists or lawyers or doctors or real estate agents. What do they want to do? They want to grow their revenue, and they want to keep their tail out of court, or they want to make sure they don't have any big insurance bills. So they want to mitigate risk. And almost everything we invest in the business world is about either growing revenue or mitigating risk. And so give them free advice on how to grow revenues or mitigate their risk. And I can guarantee you they'll beat a path to your door in terms of your marketing.
Yeah, that's great advice. One other thing I'll add about, being, and that may be an industry word, thought leadership, but basically it means sharing your knowledge with people. And one other benefit too, it can really differentiate. One of the biggest challenges we have from a marketing perspective is, people are like, oh, I can do that myself, but they haven't done a lot of the exercise that we've done, so their marketing is quite ineffective. It could even be wrong-headed at times, or from an IT standpoint, where they say, I got a guy. And basically, and he's doing managed services as well. Well, there's managed services are that's a huge world. What does that mean? What are the nuts and bolts of your services? So it's really a great way to get them in. And even if they don't use you, this is the way I look at it. I want to put this community has been excellent to me, and well beyond what I would have dreamed, 18 years ago when we started. And so I want to give back just because it's the good and right thing to do. And it's funny how when you just give stuff away, and you're not doing it in a reciprocity formula or whatever, but things come your way. And it helps you, build that brand. It helps you really ultimately, before anybody's going to transact with you, they've got to trust you. So, that trust is a great way, I think, that you can do these things. And I think is another core component of really branding or maybe even you might go as far as to say is ultimately your brand, a goal for your brand would be to instill trust. I don't know. I've never said.
And who do people trust? They trust experts.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to demonstrate your expertise than providing free and interesting content to your target market, to your target audience, back to audience, where you're able to demonstrate that expertise and show them and share that knowledge with them.
Yeah. Really, really, really good stuff. I always throw this slide pretty much if you've been watching my webinars. A lot of times this is the road where people, they learn a little something and they don't execute on it. And maybe it's not the right time for everybody, but I always want to ask the question, what should you do next? And because I know that analysis or paralysis by analysis oftentimes is really a big struggle for small to mid-sized companies. So what we've done to kind of help that is, for anybody who's on the call, we'll give you a free branding consultation with a checklist and a review to kind of help maybe jumpstart you doing these things. Normally we charge um, $350 for something like this, but we'll give that away for free. And it's something that I think that even if you did it by yourself, if you can get this stuff on paper, if you can review that paper on a given basis, your actions will begin to follow. One of the things I hear a lot, and there's books been written on it. I think they're full of it, actually, is my honest opinion. But you know how it's almost where if you start to say something, it's going to happen. But the reality is I believe the way the human psyche works is once you get it written down and you review it and you begin to question it and you ask, if you want better answers, you have to ask better questions. And that is something that once it's written down, you can review it, you can refine it, you can continue to ask those questions, and before you know it, you're doing it. And that's really ultimately, action is what makes results. So if anybody, on this webinar would like to jump on board with that, if you'll hit us up, we're going to hold that offer open until December the 8th. And really and truly, I probably only can do maybe 4 or 5 people on this with my current schedule. But if you'll get with us, or if you just have questions, anything that we can do, if you send something out to events at askbis.com, we'll do a follow up with you and help. And I'd like to throw a little plug in for Ted. Ted, of course, is he's a big wheel over at Dropbox, which is a really a huge company. And even in setting up for this webinar, he turned me on to some new things. You want to take a minute to do a shameless plug for Dropbox, Ted?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Dropbox is, many of you may be familiar with Dropbox, the product, because you've used it to, either manage, photos for your family or that sort of thing. And I just would encourage all the business owners out there to think about, how you're managing content, intellectual property, and collaboration inside your organizations, and realize that some of the best tools out there for business collaboration we're really innovated in the consumer space. And that's really where Dropbox has evolved as a company. We started out as a kind of a product to help single people manage all the content and many different devices we need to work from. But today, that's the biggest problem. If you look inside of organizations and all the friction people have around collaborating, Dropbox has a whole business product line. And I would encourage you as business owners to kind of dig deep and look at how this sort of technology can help you and your staff be much more secure and collaborative in how you work with content.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could unmute the mics, or would it be better, Christy, you take
Muted. Unmuted.
If anybody wants to, has any specific questions, or if anybody left any, Christy, in the chat box for us.
Yeah, so we had some questions come in before the webinar. One of them was, how do I get my employees involved in branding?
I'm going to let Ted handle that one.
I would say, first of all, I would say if you can afford it, if your staff is big enough, you definitely, and you've kind of cracked the code on sales, and you got like a salesperson or two who are driving your business effectively, then invest in marketing and try to get somebody who's either their half-time job or their full-time job is marketing. So number one, a lot of what we talked about today does require cycles, and sometimes as a business owner, you may not have those cycles. You guys, as a business owner, you might not have those cycles. I keep going. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, great. You know, so dedicate a marketing resource. So that's how your employees can get involved in branding. But I think if we go back to kind of the audience formulation, the corporate identity, and your mission, vision, values, make sure that's not just a top-down exercise. Make sure you incorporate, just like Philip reminded us, to get your clients and your customers in the conversation via listening posts. You got to be listening to your staff. So if you're going to go through and actually document mission, vision, values, make sure you have a committee of folks that's not just the leadership, but has people from throughout the organization involved in the process. So those are a couple ideas on how to make this a broader endeavor.
Yeah, and then once you win their hearts and minds and really understanding, that's going to be exponential in its approach, because every interaction they have with their client is going to sound like your interaction that you had with the client. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And we had one more come in. How do you measure for lead generation? Is there a tool?
Christy, you'd probably be the best to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we do, we measure all of our campaigns, because I know Philip had talked earlier about, you know, if it's successful, we want to repeat. So we have all of our campaigns in this software called 990.io, and we track number of, you know, dials for an event, number of registered attendees, number of people who showed up and did not attend. So we do a lot of measurements for that. So I'm not exactly sure which type campaign you were referring to, but there's, you know, definitely got to keep track of it. You can do it on Excel spreadsheets. You can do it in BrightGauge. There's tons of tools out there.
Yeah, I'll add to that just because I'm working with a guy right now on some stuff that he's doing, and I think setting a goal in the beginning to make sure that you don't fall in love with a loser is, and what I'm meaning by that is, like, you have this great idea that you think is going to connect so well with the market, and you're just going to keep dumping money into it. One of the things is have a goal to make sure, like in the beginning, if you kind of know what the value of a client is, well, how many clients do I need to get off of this campaign per month or whatever, and then also track it during the steps. And if you think about things logically, you could do something like, well, okay, well, this many people responded. Well, this many people had an appointment, and you could literally do this in an Excel spreadsheet or on a notebook or a whiteboard in the office. Okay, this campaign, here's how much my spend is. Okay, how many interfaces or leads were generated? How many people raised their hand asking about it? And then how many of them sat down and met with me on it? Well, how many proposals did I make? And how much revenue did I generate? That would be a very good way to determine if and what is working. And, you know, Christy does a very good job of this, and we have a system, and we'd be happy to show our system to you. There's no, we don't want to hide anything from anybody. We'd be happy to show it to you. But I think if you just dropped it in Excel, even, you could do it. But the main point is that for every campaign that you do, you need to have that, and then you could go back and make adjustments on a particular step. Let's say that you could increase your appointment setting by sending a handwritten letter to the lead. You need to play with things to see how you can layer and build that trust throughout that process, and you can play with it because if you've got a 50% people loss in raising their hands that'll actually meet with you, well, maybe you need to change something in that process to see if you can increase that. I hope that makes sense to everybody.
Absolutely. Philip, we had one more question come in. Do I have to redo my website if I redo my brand?
I would say yes. I mean, what do you say, Ted? I mean, it's
Yep.
it's a no-brainer. I mean, you have to
Yep.
because you want that consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think and you just I think it's important to recognize that today, no matter what business you're in, yeah, your website's your storefront. And even if you're like in a retail business, anybody who's not thinking about their digital presence as the most important presence is not thinking through, the massive business opportunity that we all have ahead of us. So the website is central. So it has to be aligned for sure.
Yeah, really good stuff. Well, listen, for sake of time, and I really do want to respect y'all's time. We're getting here to. We usually try to keep these things to about 45 minutes. We're a little bit over, and I thank all of you, and especially Ted, for taking time. I know your schedule and all the challenges you have going, and for spending some time with us. I really want to say thank you, and I know everyone appreciates that. And if you guys are interested in some Dropbox stuff, I can connect you with the right person. And of course, if we can ever be of help to anyone here, if you want to take us up on that kind of that branding exercise, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll follow up with you shortly. All right. Well, listen, guys, thanks again and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Again, thank you.